Hello and welcome back to Read Becca. So we've made it to my favorites shelf somehow, and if you missed part 1 where I went over all of my other shelves, I will link that in the cards and down below, so you can check that out if you like. This one, I've got multiple books per author for the most part, so I think we'll start at the bottom and work my way up, as these two shelves are really my very favorite authors, and I have multiple copies and special editions and that sort of thing. So let's get on to the tour. Of course, we couldn't get through this video without a curious cat coming along. Thank you, Rue. Thank you, Rue, for your assistance. These ones are all tiny novellas on this first bottom shelf, so I think I'm gonna have to pull out most of these. This is Flatland by Edwin A. Abbott, Heart of Darkness by Joseph Conrad. I tried to read that and couldn't get through it. Lysistrata by Aristophanes. I need to go back and reread this. I read this in college, and it is one of the classic Greek comedies that's kind of about these women going on a sex strike to stop a war. Candide by Voltaire. I read this in high school in French, and I don't speak any French anymore, so I don't know. The Red Magician. This is the other copy. I have 2 copies of this. This one is Life, the Universe, and Everything by Douglas Adams. Got Songs for Ophelia by Theodore Goss, and I think this is a poetry book. It's got a gorgeous cover. I randomly found this in perfect condition at a library sale. Lightning in the Blood by Marie Brennan. Thank you, Rue. The Five Daughters of the Moon by Lena Licutalo. The Border Keeper by Kirsten Hall. Idle Ingredients by Matt Wallace. Miranda in Milan by Catherine Duckett. Vigilance by Robert Jackson Bennett. Dusk or Dark or Dawn or Day by Shannon McGuire. Annihilation by Jeff Vandermeer. The Black God's Drum by P. Jelly Clark. Your Favorite Band Cannot Save You by Scott O'Moore. Iraq Plus 100. This is an anthology. The Kraken Sea by E. Catherine Tobler. Upright Women Wanted by Sarah Gailey. And The River of Teeth by Sarah Gailey. And Taste of Marrow by Sarah Gailey. And I've read all 3 of these and loved them all. All right, and moving on, we've got my Chuck Palahniuk collection, and I think I've read these 2 and this one. Invisible Monsters is probably my favorite of his work. Lullaby, I'm pretty positive I've read, but I don't remember. I don't remember the book. Then we've got Jasper Fforde, The Air Affair. We've got The Fourth Bear, The Big Over Easy, and Something Rotten. So Jasper Fforde writes really funny stuff. And then these are infuriating. So I have the first 2 self-published, Senlin Ascends and Arm of the Sphinx. And they're gorgeous and tall, floppy paperbacks. And then Orbit picked this up and republished the first 2 and published the 3rd. And now they're only available in this big, chunky, weird trade paperback size. And thankfully, the cover artist, Ian Liano, is a personal friend of Josiah Bancroft's, and he was able to convince Orbit to keep on Ian as his artist. So Ian has continued doing the art, so they do match for the most part. I think they changed the coloring on the first 2 for the Orbit edition so that each book is a different color, but having them the different size is very frustrating. So on next to those, we have my Guy Gavriel Kay collection, and we have The Wandering Fire, The Summer Tree, A Song for Arbonne, River of Stars, and Tigana. I would love to have all of his books in these lovely editions. I think they do have them all out in these. And then we have a couple of Ian M. Banks and Ian Banks books. So I think this one and this one, these 2 are sci-fi, and then under just Ian Banks, he writes like mystery thriller type books. So this one I think is a mystery thriller. And then we have my Anne Leckie, and hilariously, Provenance I got early before it was released because I went to an event with Anne Leckie, Annalee Newitz, and Charlie Jane Anders and saw them speak in person, and got the book early and still haven't read it. So next up here, these ones are all just beautiful books. So I've got my River Solomon books, Sorrowland and The Deep. And I really need to get a copy of Unkindness of Ghosts. And next to those, we have Arkady Martine's Teixclan Empire duology, a memory called Empire and a desolation called Peace, which again are stunning covers. I love these books, 5 stars all the way. And then we have Michelle Baker's Arcadia Project series. I've only got the first 2. These are like urban fantasy about Hollywood and the Fae. They have a lot of mental health issues dealt with these, as well as disability. These are really good books, and it bums me out that Michelle Baker doesn't have any other series out. I think Baker worked on the Orphan Black project that Malka Older was working on as well. So there has been some other writing, but just not any other published books that you can pick up. And I would love if we had other work. So next we have Victor Milan's, the first 3 books of the Dinosaur Lords series. And I love these covers. These are by one of my very favorite artists, Richard Anderson. All right, so first up on the next shelf, we have a melange of Joe Abercrombie. Obviously, I've got multiple different editions. The Blade Itself, Before They're Hanged, and Red Country. So obviously, these 2 are the first 2 books of the First Law trilogy. And then Red Country is one of the standalones. I have read The Blade Itself, but I really need to go back and reread it because I read it during a time when I was not having a good reading time, and it took me more than a year, I think, to read it, and I don't remember very much about it. So yeah, I do want to reread it and complete the series. So next we have the Red Rising trilogy, the first trilogy. I really enjoyed this series. It was one that was a page turner I absolutely couldn't put down. I know there's a lot of criticism of the first book, but I think if you can get over that criticism, or if that doesn't bother you, the continuation in the second and third are incredible space opera. It really, really expands out. Then I have continued on with Iron Gold, but I do not have that book. So I think it's out in paperback, so I need to pick that up and then also move on to Dark Age. Next, we've got my Catherine Valenti books. I have 3 of the Fairyland books. Got Glass Town Game, Palimpsest, Six Gun Snow White, and the Refrigerator Monologues. And these are all ones that I have not read. I have definitely read and loved Valenti's work, multiple other works, but just none of these because Valenti has a pretty extensive catalog. Then we've got my Nettie Okorafor books. I've got Akata Witch, Lagoon, the first and third Binti books. I have read the second, I think on audio actually, and I need to get back and read the third. Then we have Christopher Moore, got You Suck, Blood-Sucking Fiends, Practical Demon Keeping, and Lamb, the Gospel According to Biff, Christ's Childhood Pal. And he writes very satirical books. He's got kind of a sense of humor similar to Douglas Adams. Really love his work. And then we finish out this row with Charles Stross and Cory Doctorow, who both write kind of similar futurist works. We've got Charles Stross' Halting State, The Rapture of the Nerds by both authors, Down and Out in the Magic Kingdom by Cory Doctorow, Pirate Cinema, Walk Away, and Makers. This shelf is kind of random classics, maybe? Planty. Got The Golden Key by George MacDonald and illustrated by Maurice Sendak. And obviously, I picked it up for the illustrations, really. It's a very beautiful book. And then we have C.S. Lewis Space Trilogy. We have a bunch of H.G. Wells classics. I don't think any of these are beautiful enough that we need to pull them out. This one is another H.G. Wells, When the Sleeper Awakes. Spooky. These 2 are junior illustrated editions of The Wind in the Willows. and also Alice in Wonderland. And the illustrations in these are, again, just really, really beautiful, and I am so happy to have these. And then I also have this little single hardbound, cloth-bound The Riverbank, which is, I believe, one story from The Wind in the Willows, and it is also just beautifully illustrated. And then finally I have T.S. Eliot's Old Possum's Book of Practical Cats, because of course I do. Alright, so now we have some classic SFF lady authors. We've got some Tanya Huff here. We've got a whole load of C.J. Cherryh. So this is all C.J. Cherryh. And I'm not going to pull out all of these, but I love this crazy cover. Spooky alien with a baby. And more C.J. Cherryh. Sadly, I don't have the first book in her Foreigner series, which a bunch of these are from. And then this rest of this is all Lois McMaster Bujold. And I've got a mix of different series of Vorkosigan and The Curse of Chalion. I have this both in hardcover, and I've got a paperback over on my TBR shelf. So yeah, I've got several of these books. So we've got both sci-fi and fantasy. So we've got one last shelf that is, before we get to my favorite authors, we've got The Betrayals, and this is the special Waterstones edition. It is absolutely glorious. This is the naked hardback, and the back, and the end papers. This is kind of a dark academia book, I think. I need to read it. So then we have K.J. Parker. Got the Folding Knife and one of the Engineer trilogy that I found at a book sale, so I am missing the early books. We've got Mark Lawrence, One Word Kill. I've read the second one. I need to pick up the third. And we've got the Book of the Ancestor trilogy. This is the special edition that I mentioned earlier that I got from Grim Oak Press. This is the entire Broken Empire trilogy all in one book, and this is a special signed numbered edition. So as you can see, this has kind of the same styling where it's that silver effect, just like the other book I showed you. It is, so as I said, it is signed and numbered. Really, really beautiful copy of the book. Got maps and more maps, and each of the books has the original cover at the start. Okay, so we are on to my favorites of all time, Neil Gaiman, Terry Pratchett, and Ursula Le Guin. So we're going to try to run through this fairly quickly. Have the tragical comedy or comical tragedy of Mr. Punch by Neil Gaiman and Dave McKean. The Wolves in the Walls, and these two were Dave McKean art as well. The Facts in the Case of the Departure of Miss Finch. Harlequin Valentine. Murder Mysteries. And this one is one of my absolute favorites of his. This is the first take on Lucifer that he did, and it was adapted from a short story. So this is a flip on the fall of Lucifer. A Study in Emerald. How to Talk to Girls at Parties, Black Orchid, this is another Dave McKean, Marvel 1602, and I really like this one. This is actually a take on the Marvel characters if they were there at colonial times. And then we've got my Sandman books. We've got Sandman, The Dream Hunters, Season of Mists, Dream Country, and Preludes and Nocturnes. And I've read more than this of Sandman, but I don't own it. I should. Then I have The Truth is a Cave in the Black Mountains. And we are on to the novels. So first we have the illustrated box set by Chris Riddell. We have Coraline, Fortunately the Milk, and The Graveyard Book. And I did a side-by-side read of Fortunately the Milk. It's one of the children's works, but there is also a copy of this illustrated by Scotty Young, who did I Hate Fairyland. And I read them side by side and really, really enjoyed it because the art is so different. And then I have another copy of Coraline, and this is the Dave McKean illustrated version. There are only a couple of illustrations, but the cover is definitely Dave. And then I have the collection Unnatural Creatures. And then I have 2 editions of Neverwhere. Got the UK Chris Riddell edition, which includes the short story How the Marquis Got His Coat Back, and then I have the tie-in version with the series. And this is a dust jacketless version of Fragile Things, one of the collections. I have the initial version of The Ocean at the End of the Lane, the US hardcover of Norse mythology, and American Gods and Anansi Boys. And I have both editions of Good Omens by Neil and Terry, and that is where we hook into Terry's work. So in no particular order, I have mass market paperbacks of Discworld novels, The Amazing Maurice and His Educated Rodents, Going Postal, Making Money, which are the Moist von Lipwig novels, Lords and Ladies, The Wee Free Men, Soul Music, A Hatful of Sky, Pyramids, and Equal Rights. In a trade paperback, I have Judgment Day, The Science of Discworld 4, and Interesting Times. In varying hardbacks, I have Equal Rights, Raising Steam, The Last Hero, and then I also have the Discworld graphic novels, which are an adaptation of the first 2 books, Color of Magic and The Light Fantastic. Then I have the Folio Society special editions of Small Gods book and its slipcase, and Mort book and its slipcase. And these are both illustrated editions, absolutely beautiful. And the spines of those. And you can kind of tell these actually have a velvet finish on them, so they're kind of soft to the touch. Finally, for Discworld, I have the UK gift editions of the Tiffany Aching books, The Wee Free Men, Hatful of Sky, Wintersmith, I Shall Wear Midnight, and The Shepherd's Crown. And these are the fronts and the backs. And the spines. And beyond Discworld, I also have Dodger, which is Terry's take on a Dickensian retelling from the perspective of the artful Dodger as an adult, and The Carpet People, his first work. And lastly on this shelf, I have a tiny catacorn. And finally, the last shelf, we have my Le Guin shelf. And we've got a tiny dinosaur from the Target dollar bin, and we've got a TARDIS with yarn spilling out of it. So these are Rocannon's World, City of Illusions, and Planet of Exile. These are all the Ace books printing of the first few Hainish novels. And one of these is a first edition, but they're all pretty old little paperbacks. This is the Word for World is Forest. This is another Hainish novel, but this is a Berkeley publishing of that. We have The Beginning Place. This is a fantasy novel. Sea Road. I also have this in hardcover. The Compass Rose. Tehanu from the Earthsea cycle. And I'm so upset because I saw another copy of this that has embossed around the edges and shiny, and I thought that this was the same as that copy, and I regret horribly not picking that one up. And next we have Always Coming Home, which is another sci-fi far future, but I think it mixes fantastical as well. This is not tied in with her Hainish novels. And finally, for mass markets, I've got The Dispossessed, and this is a brand new copy of Harper Voyager's printing of this Hainish novel. This one is kind of odd. This is from the Outspoken Authors collection, and they publish just tiny little volumes that usually have some biographical, like nonfiction information about the author, and then a short story. So the Wild Girls is the story that is in here. Next we have The Language of the Night, and this is a collection of essays. So it's nonfiction on the genre of science fiction and fantasy, and this was all essays that were written in the 60s and 70s. It's really, really still insightful for today. I highly recommend picking it up if you're at all interested in genre fiction. Then we have The Wind's 12 Quarters. This is a collection of short stories. So Tor did a kind of random publication of different books, and Word for World is Forest is from the Hainish novels, Eye of the Heron is not, but these are those brand new Tor editions of these books. And we are on to the hardcovers. I have Sea Road, as I mentioned. A Fisherman of the Inland Sea. The Telling, and this is one of the later Hainish novels. Lavinia, this is a historical retelling from the perspective of Lavinia. And we are on to my special editions. So this is my Folio Society edition of The Left Hand of Darkness, and this is illustrated by David Lupton, and it comes with an introduction by Becky Chambers, actually. So it is just a beautiful book. The illustrations. And this is the Library of America 2-volume omnibus of all of the Hainish novels and stories. Now, you've seen me hold up one volume of this, and this is the volume inside the dust jacket. Next, we have the US illustrated edition of the Books of Earthsea, and this is the complete Books of Earthsea. It is a big chunky one. And the end papers. And this is what one of the illustrations looks like. And finally, we have The Found and the Lost, the collected novellas of Ursula K. Le Guin, and The Unreal and the Real, the selected short stories of Ursula K. Le Guin. And these are both big, chunky tomes full of her work. So that is it for my favorites shelf. I hope you really enjoyed the tour. Thank you so much for watching.